Okay, so hey guys, my name is Quinston and welcome back to another one of my videos. In this tweet review, we are going to go over some very interesting tweets. I have linked them in the description. These are my own tweets. So for the first couple of videos, I'm not going to review tweets from other people. If you want me to review tweets from other people, you can send me those links and I can review them if you want me to. But apart from that, let's get into this video. So the first tweet is, you can't be an expert on all the skills you have learned in the past at all times. The more new things you learn, the more you tend to forget the old things you knew. Now, this is very philosophical. First of all, I don't know what I was thinking when I was writing this, but I get the gist of it. The gist is basic. It's very simple. The more things you learn, the more things you tend to forget, okay? Skills are not trophies that you collect. Skills need, ROI positive. They need to be put to work. And if you're just collecting skills for the sake of collecting skills, what are you doing? That is not how it's supposed to work, okay? For example, I'm a computer engineer, and in my entire career for the last 8 years, maybe not the last 8 years, before a couple of years before that, I have never learned machine learning, never. But only because the thing is, I can only learn something if there is a problem to solve with that skill. If there is no problem to solve with a skill, why in the world would I spend resources and time learning that skill? That makes no sense to me, okay? So what it did was, I had this problem statement that came up and I was like, I need to solve this problem. And that is why I picked up a book of machine learning and started learning machine learning. That's the same in every aspect of your life. Why would you learn a skill set that you're not going to apply immediately? That's just a waste of time. Do not collect skill sets like a trophy. They're not trophies. Skill sets need to be ROI positive. Just because you can buy a Udemy course for the price of lunch does not mean that you need to actually buy that Udemy course. You don't need that Udemy course. Trust me, you don't need that Udemy course. Okay, next one. Okay, the moral of the story is, do not buy Udemy course. Do not buy skills or learn new skill sets as trophies, because they are not trophies. They need to be ROI positive. Keep that in your head. Okay, the next one is write code. Okay, I messed up the grammar here. Writing code for a tutorial and writing code for production are two wildly different tasks, and that is very true. That is very true. Whenever I write a tutorial, or I used to write tutorials, if you go back in this channel, you'll find a bunch of them, 130 videos, I think, I don't even know. So whenever you write code for a tutorial, you adjust the code in a more explanatory manner for the tutorial viewer to understand, because if that person doesn't understand the code, your tutorial is pointless. So a lot of times what I've done is, let me just turn off the AC real quick. A lot of times what I did while writing a tutorial is I simplified the code a bit more than what it should have been. I thought that because that was fine when it was a tutorial, but it was never going to go to production. And I've also mentioned in the code, I will always say this, do not use this code in production. Because in production, what happens is there are so many test cases that the tutorial code has not been tried out for, that it just becomes a problem. Because a lot of times there might be a divide by zero error, or there might be some segmentation fault, memory overload. The code might not be optimized for the machine that they're running on. Maybe web devices and web servers that rarely, it does happen if you're like compressing massive images. Like, so the code that's written for a 1 MB image might not be the same code that's written for a 10 MB image or 20 MB image, or even video sizes differ. Like a 400 gigabyte file is you get the point. It is very difficult to write a tutorial and then push that tutorial into production. So writing a tutorial is fine in its place, but rarely does the code that's written in tutorials go into production. It rarely happens, if ever. I would say it never happens, because the code in production is very different. The next is 99% ideas are not original. So, you might have this original idea. The reason I'm laughing is because original ideas don't exist, okay? Everything is an inspiration to everything else. If you read my book, How to Build a SaaS Side Hustle, linked in the description, that actually makes money. What I actually talk about is the fact that you have the creativity, okay? Creativity is very important, but creativity needs inspiration. Without input, there is no output, okay? Creativity needs inspiration, and without inspiration, you don't have anything. So basically what I'm saying is ideas are dime a dozen. That does not mean that some ideas are not better than others. Some ideas are inherently better than other ideas. Okay, there is something as idea meritocracy. It is there. Not people have this thing where they say, execution is everything, ideas mean nothing. That's not true. Okay, there are some ideas that are inherently better. Execution is important. It is very important. But if you have a great idea and great execution, you'll be more successful than if you have a bad idea and great execution. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. But yeah, to this point, I watched a Mark Cuban video recently. You probably have watched it too, where he talks about how you should do research on the history of an idea that you are going to pursue. And he also said something very interesting. He said, even if that same idea, the exact same idea is tried before, don't be afraid to try it again, if and only if you can, that you can outperform that company that tried that idea. So but don't be, the main idea behind this tweet is that do not be discouraged, okay? Do not be discouraged if your idea is very similar to somebody else, because yeah, great ideas, people tend to copy, because they're great ideas. But execution is also important. So yeah, meritocracy among ideas is a true thing. It is very real. But that does not mean that execution does not mean a lot of things. Execution is also very important. Remember that. It is very important. I think that's about it. I mean, I don't know what else to say about this. Next tweet. Periodic paranoia is a feature. Okay, so paranoia is treated like a bug mostly because people say, oh, you shouldn't be paranoid. You should be incredibly secure in your position. But if you are running inside or you are actually functioning in a free market economy, you would know that competitors are everywhere. People are trying to take your market, take it away from you, take your market share. And you obviously don't control it. It's part of the consumer, but people are trying to come after your market. And paranoia in that situation is actually a good thing. I mean, that is something that I think you should cultivate more. You should be afraid of losing market share, because if you are not afraid of losing market share, you will not take steps to improve your product or service. Okay, so periodic paranoia is a good thing. Don't be paranoid all the time. That's kind of weird. Constant paranoia might mess with your head, but periodic paranoia is actually very good. Once in a while, take a step back, look at what's happening, and just try to see if you're making the right decisions, and see if your competitors are and what they're doing and how they're trying to beat you at your own game. So one of the best things I've heard, I don't know who said this quote, but it was like, try to build a product that will defeat your own product, or something like that along those lines, like destroy your company before anybody else can destroy your company. I think Gary Vee said that. I'm not sure. You can link that in the description, in the comments. I don't know why I said description. Okay, the next one is also very interesting. So using AWS is like using C++, because everything is literally built on C++. My prediction is that in a few years, most cloud infrastructure will be run on AWS, but through third-party services that use AWS on the backend. Most developers who build applications will not be interacting with AWS directly. Okay, what this means is that I'll give you an example. Okay, so I run most of my servers on Heroku, and Heroku in turn uses AWS on the backend. You know what I mean? So what happens is, the interesting part is that in the future, I believe that every cloud infrastructure company will use data centers provided by AWS to write specific platform as a service applications, which would then use the data centers as infrastructure. And the reason is that why would anybody want to maintain their own infrastructure is the main question here. If it's cheaper, because when you think about it, who is paying the platform's money? Okay, the consumer is paying them money. The consumer does not care unless there's an SLA or something, very hard SLA, but most people don't care. Like, I don't care, but Heroku is fine. You know what I mean? Like, the end consumer does not care in most cases. In a lot of cases, consumers don't care. So what would happen in that case is that the data center requirement on the platform side is not a hard requirement. So they can just outsource all of their infrastructure to AWS. And then AWS can then, they have their own SLAs, they have their own stuff, and they can have an SLA with the platform which would then the platform would take care of everything. So you know what I mean? Like it makes a lot of sense because data structure, like the upgrade requirements of servers and maintaining the electricity, the cooling. It's not even just the cost of the servers themselves. It's the infrastructure around the servers. It's the cost of the land on which the data center is built. It's a lot of difficulty arises over this. And if AWS comes in and is like, yo, you pay us a monthly amount, and the platforms are like, okay, my consumers are just paying me monthly, I can just offset that cost directly and keep some profit for myself. So it makes a lot of sense. If I'm seeing a lot of ads by database providers like Fauna DB, I think. I'm not sure which companies these are, but a lot of people are using this model. Like they're outsourcing all their infrastructure to AWS and providing developer-specific tools, databases, server requirements, like Firebase functions, stuff like that, to Netlify. Netlify is a great example to alleviate the dependence directly on AWS. So apart from S3, I don't think I use any service directly from AWS. I use it through some other service. So yeah, it's also this is also more of a personal example. So that's also something to take care of. The next one is always reframe the problem statement to be as specific as possible. This also makes a lot of sense to me. And the reason is because whenever I think of something, okay, like I'll be very honest with you guys. One of the main things I think about whenever I think about a problem statement is what is the goal and how can I reframe the problem statement for that goal to be more defined, more specific. Because if a goal is not defined, you don't know what you are walking into. Like you don't have a clear path to success. You don't know what you're doing. So I would suggest everybody to reframe your problem statements in such a way that the goal of that problem statement is very, very well defined, incredibly specific. Like you know exactly what you are going to do. And if that's the case, it will be very easy for you to take like an algorithmic step, like do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I gotta do these things, get to this goal. It's very like if you don't have a goal, you're just floating in midair. Like honestly, just floating. Nobody wants to float. You want to be directed. So reframing the problem statement to be very specific in your endeavors makes a lot of sense. So I encourage you to do that. The last tweet is the last one for the day, and this one is well, come on. Recursion is probably one of the most beautiful concepts ever created. And I don't know if recursion existed before the computing era. Probably did. I mean, I think logicians in the early 1980s, 1890s or 1700s probably thought about recursion because of, I was reading a book on logic which talked about this. I don't know who it was or what they did. But so what is recursion, first of all? Like by definition, recursion is a repeatable pattern that calls itself, right? Something that calls itself over and over again. Like that's what computer science, that will be deal with recursion in computer science. You have a function, you have a base case, and you have the function calling itself according to some logic you define. And that I think is, so I'll be honest here, most of my products, like almost all of the products I've worked on, use recursion. Literally all of them. Farsight uses recursion, Time World uses recursion. Literally every product I've built uses recursion in some form or the other. Even if I didn't write an entire class, like Farsight has no classes except for the built-in classes that are provided by the models. But like recursion is there. Like recursion is so useful because I don't know. Sometimes what happens is when you're building user interfaces, you want to use recursion because you don't want to go through the JSON array like in a for loop. That's just ridiculous. So I just write a tree. So it just goes through every one incredibly fast. So, but there's one thing that you need to remember if you're writing front-end recursion. What happens is they only have like a tree depth of about, I think, 8,500, 8,300 on some browsers. But yeah, I mean, I would recommend using recursion in every project. Like recursion is incredibly powerful. The only downside is that it uses a lot of memory, but if you're just dealing with text, JSON text, I don't think that's a big problem. So one more thing that you need to take care of is the base case. Like you don't want your product to go into into an infinite loop in production. Like that is not desirable at all. So I will suggest that you take care in that case. But apart from that, I think recursion makes a lot of sense. I think you would accomplish a lot of work in very short amounts of lines of code by using recursion. And yeah, use recursion. So yeah, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Please buy the book in the description, How to Build a SaaS Side Hustle That Actually Makes Money. I always like to say that. It's such a great line. And thanks for watching. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.